just to reflect a bit about what we did in 2024, our OKRs are typically aligned with these three pillars here. One is research, one is training, the other communication, right? So 2024, we showcased the APAC Symposium, which was in Singapore. And thanks for those who did come. We actually, in the training session, we did 4 in-person trainings, right, in Japan, Thailand, Taiwan, and Singapore. And then we did a community-wide ETL project virtually. We took a data asset and converted it into OMP. Took a lot of effort, and it was quite amazing. From a communication perspective wise, we continue to do our quarterly newsletters, our community calls, and our scientific forums. However, we are always looking at ways to change things up, right? And how to better communicate with the community. If you go to the next slide, please. These are our 2025 goals, and where they actually align, we tried to make it where they align with the OHDSI global goals as well. So we are trying to finish up the study from a research perspective, trying to finish the study that we started last year with the GLP-1 that was committed to with the HSA, which is Singapore FDA. We are actually, as you guys are doing the Phenotype February, we have some of our APAC leads helping out with some of those studies. And then we are also trying to figure out how to do a few more studies led by the APAC team. In this case, because the symposium is actually going to be in China, we're trying to get the China team to lead some of these studies, right? And then we're trying to also strengthen our APAC presence in the OHDSI Evidence Network as well. From a training perspective, it got kicked off last year at the Singapore Symposium, where Morning actually was talking about, Professor Morning from Singapore was talking about formalizing a OHDSI curriculum in APAC. So we're going to continue to figure that out. And then we're trying to figure out either to do another ETL project or a vocabulary mapping global exercise community-wise, because those are the areas that folks are still a little behind. Right. And of course, we are going to try to support the OHDSI book, both on updating and also localizing, because it is currently in 2 different languages. And I believe there's plans to have a Japanese version soon as well. Right. From a communication perspective, OHDSI APAC, and we're looking at figuring out how to issue certificates of participation, because in APAC, that's something that's been asked for quite a bit. We've actually looked at whether or not the newsletters are beneficial to folks, so we're doing a review on those, and then how to better organize and structure our community call and scientific forum. Last slide, if you can move over, is I know it's probably been announced, but if you don't know about it, we are hosting the APAC Symposium in Shanghai this year, December 6th and 7th. So if you are looking at helping us out or wanting to attend, you now know the date and the location. Handing it back over to you, Patrick.
That was into.
Thank you so much, Mo. We really appreciate it. All right. So now that you've got links here also for the APAC community calls and the scientific forums, and we'll of course post these slides out on the OHDSI websites for you to make sure you get all access to all of this information.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mui. Next, can I turn over to Martijn to give us an update on the GenAI workgroup?
Yep, thank you, Patrick. So the GenAI and Foundational Models workgroup still has the same mission as last year, which is to advance healthcare research and improve patient outcomes through the innovative application of generative AI and foundational models. Just for the people on the call who are unfamiliar with the distinction between the two, so our workgroup has, I guess, 2 somewhat related focuses. One is just the use of GenAI, as most people know it, the large language models, but also a focus on basically using that same technology that is behind the LLMs, but now train models fully on our own data, which are not technically language models, but healthcare models, and see if they can be used in some way, for example, to improve prediction. So there's this duality, which comes back in our objectives and key results for 2025. So objective number 1, to promote awareness and collaboration in GenAI and foundational model research. This is also the same objective that we had last year. So basically just make sure that we are aware of what everybody's doing. For that, we will maintain a comprehensive directory of ongoing research have at least 6 presentations of ongoing methods research where the goal should be ongoing, so it should not already be published. So there's still an opportunity for people to contribute and basically learn and change course based on the discussion during the meeting. Have an average attendance of more than 20 researchers per meeting. And this one we added, share at least 10 prompts with the community, but those should be prompts that meet some minimum evaluation criteria, because we felt that a lot of people struggle with writing prompts, and so it would be good to have examples that other people can learn from. Objective 2, more part of this LLM goal, to provide tools for AI agents. So AI agents, of course, are the hot thing for 2025, but those agents will need tools. For example, they will need to consult the OHDSI vocabulary. For that, we would need to build tools that the agents can consume. The idea being that we can create an inventory of tools that the community needs, perhaps develop prototype tools, and then evaluate any that we develop across OHDSI. Third objective, test distributional robustness of foundational models. So this is this second type of use of generative AI, where we have foundational models that are trained on basically data in the common data model. Some of these are publicly available, mostly made available by Stanford, and we want to evaluate how well they perform across other sites in OHDSI. So that's one of our key results, will be to test these models across at least 3 OHDSI sites. And with that, I'm at the end. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Martijn. And excited to see progress that we're making as a community to bring GenAI into our real-world evidence work. Next up, I'll ask Senna to give an update on HADES Workgroup.
Sure. So for those that don't know, HADES is an acronym that stands for the Health Analytics Data to Evidence Suite, which is a cohesive set of our open source analytics software that enable OHDSI best practices for characterization, population level estimation, and patient level prediction. So if you could go to the next slide, we have a number of objectives and key results for the year. First being that we want to focus on standardizing both the inputs for our network studies as well as the outputs in our results data model. And so we have a couple of objectives aimed at providing R6 classes, which is a nice way of saying we're going to have an open, an object-oriented way of creating the input specifications for Strategus, as well as the results data model, which is the landing spot for our network studies and the data model that holds those results. We want to make sure that that is a standardized and versioned piece of software that is something that people can write reports off of, and it's consistent across studies. Last on this slide, importantly, the treatment patterns package that's been developed by the Darwin EU team, we'd like to get that into HADES, and happy to announce that that has been completed and announced on the forums as of this morning, if I'm not mistaken. So shout out to Martin and Martijn for getting that going. Next slide, please. Another performance optimization that we're making within HADES is to use DuckDB for the storage in Andromeda. And so Andromeda is a core component that's used somewhat under the hood of many of the HADES packages. And so this is also forthcoming and should be available in the next couple of weeks. We also have some objectives related to enhancing the capabilities of Strategus and expanding out the robustness of the platform. So extending out the treatment patterns package. We want to include the treatment patterns package in Strategus via a module, and so we're working towards that goal, as well as making Strategus and the template that we use to design network studies more robust by adding additional unit tests and integration tests that go against all of the various database platforms that we support within OHDSI. And then finally, we would like to continue to push towards having more containerized mechanisms for executing HADES, as well as enabling an execution engine within the community. And so there are folks that are going to be working on that objective within our team, and we're still working out some of the key results associated with that. So that's the HADES list. Thank you.
Thank you, Senna. Congratulations again on your master's degree, and congratulations to Martin for getting the treatment patterns package into the Hades suite. I know that we've got a whole bunch of guideline-driven evidence studies that are looking forward to using that package. So we'll definitely make sure that Martin joins one of the upcoming community calls to talk more about the details of that package, so that everybody who's eagerly anticipating its use can learn more about that. All right, next up, we've got Cindy. I think you're going to represent the Vision Research and Eye Care work group.
All right, thanks, Patrick. So our work group is focused on improving vision outcomes. Next slide. We accomplished a lot this past year, including a couple of network studies looking at uveitis phenotypes, and we also mapped intraocular pressure, which is an important key eye data element. And as a group, we also submitted probably close to a dozen challenge submissions for the NEI Odyssey Challenge. Next slide. In terms of our goals for this upcoming year, in terms of guideline-driven evidence generation, we have 2 network studies already underway, and we're really excited to work on that as a group. Next slide. In terms of evidence-driven data standardization, we are focused on identifying and standardizing a minimum set of eye exam elements for us to really do meaningful vision research. And we have set a goal for ourselves of ETLing visual acuity, which has thus far been our white whale in terms of data elements. And last slide. And of course, we will focus on collaborative education in terms of publishing the work that we've been doing and educating particularly the ophthalmic community on the amazing work that Odyssey does. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Cindy. That was short and sweet, but very good. Though I'm very disappointed that you didn't use the eye chart to actually write your slides and we all had to read them all the way down to the very small font. But other than that, I give you an A+. All right. Michael, can I ask you to give an update for our transplant work group?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Minkowski, NYU Langone. First off, I'm very new to the group, and I'm very excited to kick off the Transplant working group. So not a lot of updates, but a lot of hopes for the future. Next slide. So we are just starting off this working group. Basically, we aim to enable observational research in solid organ transplant. The one thing that is very particular about our field is that we don't only have a patient, a recipient of the transplant, but also we have a donor. And that's important to incorporate the donor data for phenotyping, for analyzing the outcomes and the procedures itself. So that's for sure one of the key areas of our work. Let's say, can we extend the common data model to accommodate the donor data? Also, we operate a lot of national registries. Those also have particular vocabularities and coding systems. That would be another aim of our group. Next slide, please. So since we are just starting, the objectives and efforts really for this year are to recruit co-leaders and more members, identify the gaps in the common data model to basically lay the foundation for transplant extension, and also start defining the transplant-specific phenotypes. And we meet every other Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And actually, we're meeting this Friday. So anyone is interested in transplant, in all solid organ transplants, so liver, kidney, lung, heart transplants, welcome to join. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Appreciate you joining and taking on this leadership and driving us towards clinical evidence for a really important area. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, our next work group, LATAM. I think Julio, you're gonna give the update here?
Okay, thank you, Patrick. So I would like to bring some few information about LATAM. For start, it's really quickly. So LATAM, we have 20 independent countries and a few regions belong to other nations. We are talking about 600 million people. 2/3 of them speak Spanish and 1/3 speak Portuguese. This 1/3 comes from Brazil, that is the largest country in the region. We have a very marked ethnic heterogeneity through throughout the region and strong social inequality. And one important characteristic of Latin America when it comes to health data is it's a widespread open data policy between governments. So we have several public databases available here with great potential. Each country has its policy to access that data, but the access is open and encouraged, and that brings to the region a great potential for conducting observational studies with real-world data. Next slide, please, Patrick.
Yep.
Okay, so we defined one OKR connected with the evidence-driven data standardization goal of the OHDSI community. The objective is to strengthen the OMOP adoption initiatives in Latin. So this is our main goal, right? The key results, we want to have more than 50 people participating in the first Latin OHDSI Symposium. Yes, we will have the first Latin OHDSI Symposium here in Brazil, in Salvador. We don't have the date defined yet, but at least the local. We want to have at least 10 institutions engaged in the Latin American work group during the year, and have at least 5 Latin countries represented in the working group. Okay, some activities that we mapped that we will conduct this year is the event. We will host the event, right? Strat engagement with working group Latin members. We want to update the official publication of SIGTAP vocabulary that is a vocabulary available in the OHDSI vocabulary team, but it needs to be updated, right? And also to conduct a translation of the atlas into Portuguese and Spanish, because we think this could be improved, the adoption of these tools. Okay, and next slide, please, Patrick.
Yep.
And that's it. That is a final vision of the one inspiration to the event, to creating the atmosphere for this event. That is something that we are really excited to bring to Latam. And that's it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Leo, and the LATAM team. Really going to be excited as you talk about an open data policy to see LATAM data partners being able to engage in global studies and contribute to our understanding to fill a clear evidence gap. Very good. Next up, John, can I turn it over to you to give an update on the Databricks user group?
Absolutely. Can I share my screen here?
Sure, I've got your slides here too, unless you'd like to do it yourself.
Yeah, great, perfect. Yeah, so skip to like slides 3, the Databricks user group objectives for 2025. Yeah, that's the one.
Right there. There you go.
So we have 4 major objectives. The first one is to improve testing and validation. The second is to update and extend our online documentation. Some of the things in the Databricks UI have changed. Some of the things in Atlas Web API have changed. That one's pretty straightforward. We just need to update that documentation. We want to do some automation of the creation of our environment so that we really want to bring the bar down as low as possible for what it takes to go from 0 to a Databricks implementation of the OHDSI stack. And then we want to improve our community engagement, and we'll get to that more. So basically, what can we do to get more people involved in our group? I think it's somewhat of a catch-22 as we develop more tools and become more proficient and more salient in the workspace. People are going to become more interested in using those tools, but how do we get people to engage and contribute to the creation of those tools? And I don't think we're alone in that. I think there's lots of groups that suffer from this, but we need to get creative on that a little bit. So next slide. So for improving integration and testing, the strategy we're going to take here is we'll most likely use the strategist study repo template that Sina and others have been working on. And the strategy here is to implement automated testing using R and the default database, which will add value there, and then apply those same tests to Databricks. And the idea would be you would just need to change your connection configuration, and those same tests that work in other environments should also work in the Databricks environment. Next slide. For documentation, this is just straightforward. We need to compare our documentation to our current reality and make the updates. Next slide. And then for the automation and the creation of the environment, as I said, what we want to do is there's a lot of steps to set up this environment, and we want to be able to automate as many of those steps as possible. Next slide. And then finally, how do we improve community engagement? And, we've tried different things, and like, what do we got to do? Give out t-shirts. So I'm welcome to any and all input on how we get people to participate more. And I think, like I said, we just need to keep going. And as we gain momentum, hopefully nothing succeeds like success. And I think that's my time. Oh, I left 4 seconds on the table, including my setup time.
Thank you, John. And I know that there's lots of members in the community who are suckers for swag. So I think you're giving out t-shirts is probably not such a bad idea. Though we are definitely seeing a lot more adoption of Databricks in the broader community. So I'm sure you're going to see growth organically as that platform starts to be used by many more organizations. Thank you for that, John. Turn it over to Paul. Can you give an update on our imaging work group?
Thank you, Patrick. So last year, there were over 10,000 peer-reviewed papers on using deep learning and AI for medical imaging segmentation and classification. Our quest is to bring the reproducibility we've developed within OHDSI to the imaging research world, and also bring all the fantastic features that are being developed in imaging research into clinical outcomes research. So next slide. Really, I'm really pleased to lead this committee with Chan at Yonsei University in Seoul. We have a great group, and the way we're doing that is we basically have we started in 2021. We built an imaging extension over about 2 years of consensus building within the OHDSI community about how to build standards and conventions for extensions within OHDSI. And we have basically one table to map source data for medical imaging from DICOM, and another table to track all the imaging features that we create from our segmentation algorithms. And so we developed that. We actually published that paper in February of 2024. Next slide. And that paper has already been accessed over 3,800 times, has already been cited 8 times. It's actually been implemented by 3 vendors already, including Microsoft on their Azure platform. So we're really excited to seeing the uptake of imaging research and how we can really bring reproducibility to the field of imaging. We actually have our meetings at 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. alternatingly on Wednesdays, and we do that really to be inclusive of both our colleagues throughout the world. And so we have it for European as well as for our Asia Pacific colleagues, and we found that to be a great way of bringing our communities together. So we are continuing that. We now have over 200 members of our imaging working group, so it's an open work group. We encourage all people to attend, and this year's gonna be really exciting. If you go to the next slide, we've done a lot in the last year, but I want to go to the next slide for what we're up and coming to do now. Now we're actually doing, so skip one more slide, and this is our final slide around, here's what we're doing now is building reference implementations for how to do this on real world data. We've actually done this on large clinical registries like the Alzheimer's Data Network Initiative, and now we're implementing this at right now 3 medical institutions, and we're trying to develop all the common guidelines and conventions for how you handle DICOM global unique IDs and map to accession numbers, to procedure occurrences, to order IDs, and then also trying to figure out where we want to build conventions. So there are actually over 1,000 pieces of metadata for every DICOM image. Some of them are very useful, like spatial characteristics, like the resolution of the image, or the contrast characteristics, like which describe the imaging physics around it. But there's also a ton of other fields, and so we could literally have 1,000 DICOM measurements per DICOM study, and that would actually increase the already overburdened measurement table as it is. And so we're trying to figure out ways, or what's the right conventions to make useful for most patterns of medical imaging research. And so our goal this year is going to be focusing on reference implementations in the real world, as well as education on how to make this implementation as straightforward as possible. We've submitted our 3rd paper already. Our first paper was on the structure of imaging extension, and our 3rd paper is on the semantics of the vocabulary needed to be able to incorporate this into the OMOP data model. And our fourth paper is how we're using this to replicate research within the ADNI data network. And then we really would like to put together a software guide for how to do ETL harvesting of DICOM data, and also hopefully contribute to the Book of Odyssey and raise awareness. We're really excited by the NEI last year and how much they've aligned with medical imaging research with Odyssey with their NEI Challenge Grant. So we're really excited about the potential for really accelerating research in the imaging space. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, Paul. It's great to see how much excitement for the imaging work is going on in the broader community, and thankful to you and Chan for pulling this into our community. I'm going to stop sharing. Andrew, you said you've got slides on your side to talk about psychiatry?
Great. So this group is very clearly aligned with the overall Odyssey mission of doing work that is going to help inform guidelines and produce evidence that's needed for guidelines, as well as some of the infrastructure that presupposes. And the overall mission is to develop and use informatics capacity to support evidence generation that will improve patients' mental health. And we did a lot in the last year, and it's people other than me, mostly I'm referring to here. And a lot of that is building on prior work that Dima and Paulina and others have done already to extend what you can represent in OMOP around patients' mental health. The information you get just from diagnosis codes is fairly gross and not very granular, not very well suited to the particular features of mental health that are of interest in most treatment decisions or predictions. And so one of the main underlying pieces of work we've been working on for years, building on that initial work, is making it possible to represent things in a standard way that gets at this more granular information, mostly by working on scales, psychiatric scales, neuropsychiatric scales, scale scores, even item level information. And we're doing that work in a way that's aligned with what other standard development organizations are doing. We're lucky enough to have Piper Rinaldo on, who leads the group in SNOMED that's helping to define what the overall structure for concepts ought to be and how they work, which obviously is a very important vocabulary for us. Also, there's work in LOINC and the human phenotype ontology that we're contributing to, and we're trying to get grants that help move all of that fairly complex but very fundamental work forward over the past year. We've also begun to assess support for the use of those vocabulary in representing data and neuropsychiatric scale scores. So we drafted and scoped the contents of mental health measures of interest so we can query interested members to see what they can get from various data sources in their EHRs, if they have EHR data, and identified viable strategies for collecting those data from EHR flow sheets, and as I'll mention in a second, from unstructured data. And so with respect to that, there's been a pretty large amount of progress, mostly driven by Ming at University of Texas, Houston, and building on prior work that Christoph and Jenna did for a study predicting conversion from major depressive disorder to bipolar disorder. And we're using that to see where you can get this other data you need to get the more granular information. So you can get it from flow sheets, which is just where your structured questionnaire data lives in your EHR, or getting it from text, notes, reports, and stuff. So there's been a lot of progress, a really excellent draft of a study protocol that's proving what you get, how you improve on that prior work that Christoph and Jenna did with this new information from structured flow sheets and unstructured data. And beyond that particular study, we're really trying to canvass who's got information of this type and specify in a sort of, I think, setting some of the stage for other research for who's got data on neuropsychiatric scale scores, what kinds of patients are they collected on, in what settings. I think a lot of the, once we get that descriptive understanding of what the community is able to do, we're going to be able to ask more and more important questions that are going to help define care. So we're moving to the place where a lot of this prior work is going to pay off. And for the next year, we're going to be building on that by completing that study on the value of NLP and flowsheet data, advancing the work on SNOMED, doing this work of characterizing, who's getting what kind of scale data from where, and demo that we're going to be supporting other community members that are doing similar kinds of work on vocabulary and need this. The fantastic group in across several African countries, the Inspire Network is one of those folks we're going to be hoping to help out as they lead a lot of excellent work. And then Tatiana is, as you know, hopefully proposed this work for Phenotype February that's really helped setting the stage for informing guidelines about treatment of psychosis data. Please do join us. We meet once a month on Wednesdays from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern, and you can sign up in the usual spot. Thanks so much.